Alright then, it's time to finish this list off. On the base, I've already gone through the Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Magic Prodigies in 2 separate videos. So you can basically check out those if you want to see the rationale for why these are basically all listed here as they are. But now we're basically jump into the Willpower and the Cunning Prodigies for Tales of Maj'Eyal. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'll note that Willpower is basically got some very interesting prodigies. You have Draconic Will, you have Meteoric Crash, all this other lovely stuff. For Draconic Will, it's basically very similar to Draconic Body, except it is basically more for your mental state as opposed to your physical state. It basically has the same requirements, but it basically has a very powerful effect where it can basically prevent all negative effects from happening for 5 turns. So think basically Spy of the World, except it's basically just for everything for the most part. And it's got a longer cooldown. Now, I'll note this ability right here is basically instant, so you can basically if you here's the thing. If you really want to for the Draconic Will, you can basically set so basically always happens at the start of every fight. You go into the options to basically do it. So that's basically something you basically do with this if you want to. And basically the idea of this Telos basically prevents all those nasty judgmental effects being thrown onto you at the start of a fight. So it's very useful for that purpose. I've seen people basically say Draconic Will is basically one of the must-have talents, and for the most part, it's fairly good. It just has that cooldown, basically sort of makes it not go off all the time. So you basically get 5 turns of it, and then you have 10 turns of nothing basically protecting you. But it's still quite effective for getting rid of a lot of the stuff basically going to be thrown at you in the fight if you know when to basically use it. I'm not sure it can be dispelled, but that's something basically note. But whatever. Draconic Will, easily one of the top tier S tier talents, I think, so we'll throw it basically up here. I'll throw it basically ahead of Spy of the World. Just because it basically affects all talents as opposed to just the physical ones, so very effective for that. Alright, Garkul's Revenge. So Garkul's Revenge is basically a lore related prodigy. It basically gives you that nice big 1,000 damage to constructs because of what Garkul basically does in his lore against the halfling golem. So, to basically get Garkul's Revenge, it basically requires you to learn all of Garkul's lore, wear Garkul's teeth, and wear a steel helm of Garkul. Now, this prodigy is basically one that, it's useful if you get it for the 20% damage boost to all humanoids and giants, but you're really basically getting this for the boost to 1,000 damage to all constructs. And, basically that's just so you can basically beat the endgame after endgame sort of boss, so to speak, the big giant golem, Amplification, I think it was basically called. If you basically get for that purpose, then great. But it's not really useful, useful really outside of it. Besides the 20% damage to humanoids, which is it is quite a few ways to fight. But besides the end game bosses, I guess there's not that many enemies that basically are a humanoid. Well, especially orc bosses and everything else too. So a lot of stuff is going to get the dance boost on, but there's other stuff is rabbits to get that dance boost for. So Garkul's Revenge is basically one of those it's good to have if you want to basically do something specific, but it's really D tier because that's basically all you can really say about it. And just to sort of throw it out, there is few constructs in this game sort of fight, so maybe it might be useful in the Embers of Rage campaign, but even then there's not a lot of constructs in that campaign to fight. So yeah, I prefer basically get something besides this really. So not much more to say about that. All right, so hidden resources. That was close achievement. So that was close basically means you get reduced to leave to 1 HP or less, and basically if you get down that low, then you basically get access to the hidden resource prodigy here. Hidden resources is a pretty powerful prodigy because basically lets you basically use your resources without any constraint. So basically if you are playing say an equilibrium summoner, and you basically use hidden resources, it'll basically let you use all your summons basically one after the other without any equilibrium being accumulated. And this would be the same for say a Shadow Blade using his attack Blitz at the start of a turn, basically to get 5 turns basically like 0 resource using, which basically lets your like burst like go even like that much longer basically so to speak. Basically like hidden resources lets you like get off you have a whole lot more of like your abilities like your resources basically like to do stuff before it's like drawn upon. As long as you basically use it before like the spell fails and stuff like that come into play. So for some like characters, it's very very important to have hidden resources, I think, or like have some means to basically manage your resources if like that's an issue. Now, here's something to note about hidden resources, though, by the way. If you basically don't find you're having resources problems on a class, then it's like not that useful, but for those that basically are, it basically is. So, that's basically what my takeaway from it. It's probably one of those ones that are like, around the same like, B tier as like, other formations, so let's throw it up there. So, let's throw it right there, I think. Alright, lucky day. Have at least 5 plus luck. So, I know that luck is basically a hidden stat in this game. And you basically naturally get like increased luck if you're basically playing like a halfling, I think it is. And it'll basically like you boost up like your various like abilities. So basically you'll get like an increase in accuracy for like a point of luck, defense, critical hit chance, physical save, mental save, spell save. It basically just makes you better at like every little thing, but only by a little bit. So back in the day, this might have been like better because it lets you like get like a 40 like boost of luck. So basically you can like do more of like this stuff here. So 40 points of like accuracy base means that you get like 16 accuracy, 16 defense. You get like 12 critical hit chance increase. You get some like saves. Basically, gets like a nice little bit of stuff all around. The default 50 luck gives no benefit, and you'll get a penalty at less than 50 luck. So that's something to watch out for. So luck also, if you're other minor effects, basically luck does not affect the chance to get a hostile encounter on the world map, which is always 2%. But if you do not get a hostile encounter, the chance of getting a harmless encounter is 1% plus luck. And a chance to be able to apologize to like Officer Wise and fight him if you tell him you spoke to Zulu. So no probably like luck basically like interacts with a few things, but not a whole lot, I guess. And defense given by duck and dodge, that's basically a halfling thing, I think. So yeah, this is like the halfling race talent for like halflings. Basically, you get duck and dodge. Basically, you can like do more of it. So whenever you take like raw talent level percent of more of your life from a single attack, you gain evasion and additional defense. That's like a very like lacking like talent at this point. So I'll note that basically for like lucky day, this used to be like one of the original like prodigies, but it's basically sort of fallen off the wayside in like recent like updates because 40 luck is basically just not that great anymore. It does like have a little bit of benefit, but at the same time, you'd rather get something else, I think, besides it again, much like Garkul's Revenge. You also get the chance to like 10% move out of the way of every attack, but I mean, that's just like I'd rather you just get something else and like chance to move out an attack basically. So I'd say Lucky Day is probably like where he's like it needs to be reworked again type of talent, so let's put an F tier down here. Alright, Mental Tyranny. So this requires to deal 50k mind damage. And the idea for like Mental Tyranny is that basically is a sustain that basically like converts your damage to mind damage, which is basically like not very resistant by a lot. You basically get 30% mind resistance penetration and 10% mind damage. So the thing about Mental Tyranny is that basically if you're doing mind damage on a character, you'll basically be able to like avoid a lot of defenses for like a lot of like enemies, because a lot of them will basically have like a lot of like defense to like other like elements, but not like to mine really. So if you basically get like Mental Tyranny, you can basically like do like another damage type if you basically have like something else basically you're like focused on. So I don't know how you basically get 50k mind damage and say an arcane blade, but if you basically got like Mental Tyranny on like an arcane blade, you'd be able to like basically have like a mind like damage output, which is basically not resistant as much as like other like effect types. So that's basically like how I basically see like Mental Tyranny here, sort of like the telegraph ability, but it's just sustained. And I'm not basically thinking about like Mental Tyranny is that if you get basically on like a character that actually uses mental like abilities like Assault Fist or like Doomed, this will actually boost up their damage output by a little bit more. So basically they have like more chance to like basically like get through like the defenses of enemies like the mind penetration and stuff like that, and do more mind damage and stuff like that. So basically it's like this an increased damage boost to like all your stuff here. It's not bad basically for what Mental Tyranny basically does, but it's also like it's just mind damage for the most part, and like it could be doing like something else besides the all this like stuff right here. But compared to like a lot of these other talents, it's basically still like fairly useful. So I probably would throw it basically up here in like the bottom C tier because oops, it's at least still got like some use to it. It's just like it could be buffed a lot more. All right, Meteoric Crash. So you actually well, I've seen this like multiple times probably in a game for like my Let's Plays, but I'll note the Meteoric Crash is basically a common like boss prodigy that a lot of like enemies basically have. You'll basically fight from the female demoness they basically get from like the summoners basically in like those like sort of like cultist worship of stone type of quests. You also see like it from like other enemies as well. And basically the idea of like Meteor Crash is that like crash down a bunch of meteors. We basically like do like spell effects. So basically it's a passive that basically like happens every 15 turns. And whenever you do like a spell or mind attack with like with Meteor Crash basically off cooldown, it'll basically have like this like massive like 3 meters basically come down and basically stun, cause like the ground turn into lava. You'll basically cause like damage to stuff. You'll set like your fire damage bonus and penetration to your highest damage bonus and penetration. So basically, what's great about Meteor Crash is that if you have like a sort of like fire mage, it'll basically like make you even more like deadly. And even for like non-fire mages, you'll basically be able to like unleash like a whole lot of like chaos basically on your enemies basically every like 15 turns without doing anything else. So this is basically like an additive effect that you basically don't actually control, but it's still like, very powerful when you use it. Plus being able to you do a stun and like split the damage between fire and physical means you have like 2 damage types, which is always nice as well. To sort of like get around like defenses and stuff. It's definitely one of like the more like better talents Meteor Crash, so I'd probably say it's at least a B tier or an A tier. I'm gonna say it's basically bottom of B tier, I think, right there. So it's basically more like it's near like as good as like say a Cauterize something basically just one, but not as good basically as it. All right, so range amplification device. So have a light radius of 10 or more. So that's just easy enough to basically do. You just have to get some gear for it. So this is another sustain for like 10 turns, 10 turn cooldown. And basically you activate a special focusing device that extends all your ranged spells and psionic powers ranged by 3, max 10. Increases fatigue by 28% while active. So basically the idea of like this like ability here, it'll basically let you like cast your spells and your psionic powers basically past the range of like of 10. So if there's basically stuff outside of your sight range that you can actually see, like say it's in higher or like with a comment again, you can basically like get the drop on before you have a chance to basically do anything. That can be really powerful if like you can basically like abuse it because the enemies will be like not be able to basically react for like a few turns while they basically get in line of sight of you, and if they don't actually have their own like abilities to attack cast past like 10 sight rays, you can basically keep abusing it for like a few turns before they get in range. So it's a nice little way of basically getting like the drop on people if you have like the situation for it. It's not always useful though because like if you're basically in like a cramped like corridor, then like there's like a corner up above, and you can't like just stand around a corner. You basically have to like get to like the end of the corner and basically fire and maybe right on top of you at that point. But in some maps, in some ways, this can be very powerful. Just need like the right opportunity for it to be useful. I'm not really interested in the fatigue bonus, but I mean, it is a sustain you can turn off if you need to, so it's not that bad for that purpose either. So range application devices right here. This is definitely like one of the B tier like abilities again, I think. So do I want to say it's basically around the same as like pain enhancement system? I wonder. I'm gonna say it's probably a little bit less than that. We'll say it's basically around like the bottom of like B tier for now. All right, so that's basically like that one. And then we have spell feedback, which is basically an anti-magic prodigy. So spell feedback, it's a passive that basically happens every 9 turns, and when you basically hit by spell damage, you retaliate with 20% mind damage, and also inflict 35% spell failure for cooldown duration of that spell. Spell feedback is actually a very powerful prodigy if like you use it against like spellcasters, I guess, but it's really not that useful basically outside of like spellcasters, and there's basically a whole lot of like other stuff basically to worry about. Really, like this, like another like one of these big prodigies that could be like a little bit more focused to like do more stuff. So again, spell fear was basically another one of those talent prodigies like is an F tier. I'll probably say it's again it's like well, probably around like here. it could be better is the thing. Like, it's nice that there is like a talent based like project causes like spell failure, but it needs to do like more than like just that. Like, maybe like bust up like the characters, like do something, or um maybe it like causes like your like debuffs to go off or something like that. Lots of stuff is basically due to basically be improved by a lot. All right, Unbreakable Will. So automatically cures mental effects while not on cooldown. I mean, it's nice, I guess. It's sort of like Spawn of the World, but the fact is like mental effects are not that like of an issue basically in this game, and where they basically are an issue, I'd rather have like say like Spawn of the World, like basically protects like more like dangerous type of threats to me, like physical. Unbreakable Will is basically one that like if it basically like cured like one mental, one physical, and one like magical defense effect non cooldown, like say like one like the runes basically does, that would actually make this like great. But as it is right now, it's just not good enough. So I'll probably throw this basically down here like F tier again. All right, so that's basically all the willpower based like prodigies. I'll note that I've used like Meteoric Crash myself. I've used like Draconic Will. And this is actually something to note, by the way. Between like willpower and like constitution, I think that these are basically the two like weakest like prodigy trees basically to work from. Even though like willpower is basically a lot more common because like there's a lot more characters that basically use willpower, and like all the anti-magic characters basically use like willpower as well. But I only find like from these like ones right here, like hidden resources, Meteor Crash, really. Maybe like ranged application device. Never actually used this before, but it sounds like it could be useful. They're all basically like gimmicky, so I would say these ones. So that's basically what I can say about the willpower ones. Definitely could be a lot better. All right, we're gonna get to the final one of these prodigies, the Cunning Prodigies, and this has a lot of like the interesting ones, I guess I'll say. So we'll start with Adept. So you're Adept at many different skills, grant you have 1.5 to all known talent levels. What this basically means is that all your skills basically in your game, like your category levels, they all basically get boosted by like 50%, so to speak, which is very, very powerful. Some like if your talents will basically get like additional like effects basically when they're basically like, pushed above like 5 like talent levels. So you might get like an extra range out of something. You might get like extra stun duration or stuff like that. And you also get like all the incremental effects of like more damage and like more like duration of other stuff and stuff like that. Basically, Adept makes you better like everything you basically do, and that's basically across the board. It's basically like Arcane Might, but like just for your talents basically. The only thing about Adept is that you basically don't know what basically if you don't know what your character is basically all about, then like you may not like basically understand what those basic effects basically are. That's Adept right there. I probably would say Adept is basically one of the higher rated like tier things, but at the same time, it's basically also like you have to know what you're basically doing with it. So it's basically around the same like level as Cauterize in that sort of regard. So I basically probably for like a bottom B tier again. Or A tier, I guess, is like, this one. So, yeah, A tier. Alright, Elemental Surge. Deal 10k arcane, fire, cold, lightning, light, or nature damage. So, that's fairly easy basically to accomplish. So, this is basically a passive again that, triggers every 10 turns. And the idea for it is that basically you automatically release Elemental Blast of damage, also granting buffs for 2 to 3 turns, I guess. I don't want to say this is turns, but okay. The blasts are changed by dealing elemental damage, and each element has a separate cooldown. So you actually have to read this basically to see what it's basically all about. But basically if you do like arcane damage, basically, and you deal like a critical effect basically of the element, you'll basically trigger like a secondary effect. So for arcane, you basically do like increased spell casting speed. For fire damage, you basically get the basic ability to like cleanse physical and mental detrimental effects on you. Cold damage basically the first chance to like turn your skin into ice, reducing physical damage and stuff like that. Basically, Elements of Surge is like how can I put this? It's basically sort of like this passive that like and my headset went off there for a moment, but anyways, Elements of Surge is basically like this sort of like this like little like project basically gives all your abilities like just like random effects that you can basically make use of. But none of them are like all that really useful, and they all have like a basic chance of like doing stuff. So basically Elemental Surge is basically one of those like things that like it could be nice if it basically like dig a little bit more than what it basically does. I'd have to say for Elements of Surge, like, it'd be nice if basically like the cooldown basically off, or like, it's basically separate for like each damage type, so basically get like more effects basically out of it. But basically as it is, Elements of Surge is another one of those projects that needs like a rework. And I'll note that basically compared to the other stuff right here, I would actually consider this basically all the way down here, like, the bottom of F tier of all things too. So there's that too. Alright, Endless Woes. So this basically like, sort of like, Elements of Surge, but basically it's like, more like, Acid, Blight, Darkness, Mind, or Temporal damage, so the other like damage types. Endless Woes is a little bit different for like, Elements of Surge because it's basically more offensive related as opposed to like, defensive related. Basically, if you look at Elements of Surge here, note that basically all the abilities right here are basically all like, defensive in nature. So basically get like increased spellcasting speed, that's like, a self effect, cleanse detrimental effects, that's basically self effect. Light damage basically is a barrier around you, basically absorbing damage, that's basically, defensive. If you look at Endless Woes though, which basically is like, the same, but like, it basically like, does debuffs basically. So basically it's like, where you basically start debuffing enemy space around you. So any like, acid damage has a 20% chance to like, deal like a lasting acid on like enemies basically. So they take like, initial damage for 5 turns, reducing their accuracy. So basically it's sort of like, reduce their accuracy basically, so to speak. You have blight damage here is basically because of random disease, and because like, reduce their stat basically. You have dark damage basically has a chance to blind. You have like temporal damage has a chance to slow. Mind damage has a chance to like, confuse. Again, this is like all stuff that's like, it sounds like, it's like useful, but at the same time, like, it's got that cooldown basically like 10 turns. And, if like, each of these things really like, trigger like separately, then like, if you're doing all these damage types, then like, you're basically gonna be like doing a whole lot of stuff with the enemies, but because like, it doesn't like, happen enough really. It's just never like these like, F tier talents, and even compared to like, almost it's even worse than that, because enemies can always resist the boss too, so there's that too. So yeah, starting off with like, Cunning, we basically have like, one very good prodigy, and then we have like, 2 bad ones. And then we move to Eye of the Tiger. So, critical hits reduce talent cooldowns. Does not affect demented talents. So, the idea of like Eye of the Tiger is that basically if you have like prodigies that are basically on cooldown, this can basically let you like, bring those like, talents basically off of cooldown a lot faster. I'll note that basically like, Eye of the Tiger is basically one of those like, prodigies that basically it's gotten worse basically over time. As like it's like more like prodigies, more like talents basically on characters now. Basically, it's like cause like your talents basically to like be on like cooldown like a lot more because it's basically more of them to go through. It used to be like Eye of the Tiger is basically considered one of our projects, but as like talents basically gotten on, it's basically gotten like less so, and bringing it about time basically got to rework as well. So I'd have to say Eye of the Tiger is probably another D tier talent. It's not like completely F tier, but it's basically right to the cusp of it. So it's definitely one that needs to like be like boosted a little bit, I think, in its use. Alright, Masters of Disasters. This is one of the newer prodigies. And it doesn't have any prerequisites like, Eye of Tiger here, so that's something I know about Eye of Tiger. It doesn't have any prerequisites, so you can basically easily get it, but weak prodigies this week. Masters of Disasters. No prerequisites, so you basically get whenever you want to. And the idea of like Masters of Disasters basically causes like, cross tier effects, basically cause the R2. So basically if your physical, steam, spell, or mind powers are all increased. Alright, so basically read this a little bit here. The idea of like, cross tier effects is basically if you cause like, if you basically cause an effect that causes someone to get off balance, you'll basically cause like the other effects as well. So you're adept at wreaking havoc on your foes. Anytime you deal damage to a creature, you apply the incoming disasters effect for 20 turns. Each time you or any others will apply a cross tier effect to this creature, you also try to apply the other two. In addition, your physical, steam, spell, and mind powers are increased by floor. Interesting. So 20 plus cunning times 0.6, basically get like massive increase basically in like your powers as you go along. Actually, what? I think this is basically more for like the secondary feature than like the first here, but whatever. I love for cross tier effects basically. Did you just like you basically put like say like off balance on someone? You're basically trying to also apply like spell shock and brain lock here. That's like the idea here. So basically like cause like lots of basically like detrimental effects basically enemies basically deal with. Nope, I use like Shadow Infliction runes, so those are basically like clear all those, but if the enemy doesn't have it, then like it's not really gonna help them as much. And we can also do the wild infusion eggs as well, but whatever. Basically, the idea of like Masters is that so basically like makes us have you can apply basically much more debuffs on enemies, and if they have no ways of basically clearing it, it basically means it'll be like, hamper from like really dealing, as much damage to you as a result of it, or it'll really slow down and like, not be able to like, deal damage that way. I have to read up basically on this Physical Steam spell and Mind Powers myself. This is, as I said, new prodigy, but it looks like it'd be very, very powerful to have like increased powers for like doing stuff, because that's basically like your application power for like abilities. So this actually means it can actually like apply those like nasty effects, maybe apply a little bit better. So it looks like it could be good. Not great, but good enough. Okay, Master Disaster. That's it right here. I'm not really sure how good it is, basically, so I'm just going to throw in C tier, but, it's definitely one of those, like, prodigies that, like, it sounds like it could do a whole lot if, like, you basically want to, like, apply a bunch of effects to people. Of course, if you're not really focusing on applying effects to trying to kill stuff, then, like, you're right as kill stuff, right? But, honestly, like, bosses would probably be more effective, so there's that, too. Alright, the Secrets of Telos. So, this is very similar to, like, the Legacy of Naloran type of, like, prodigy, in that basically you have to have, like, a bunch of, like, set requirements basically done. In this case, you have to basically assemble, like, the Telos Spire of Power, which basically means you have to collect, like, Telos' staff crystal, Telos' staff top half, Telos' staff bottom half, and then use this project basically to make it into, like, the Telos Spire of Power. So, unlike with, like, Legacy of Naloran, this doesn't really give you any real benefits other than, like, the staff here. Though it is, like, an arcane staff, so at least that's going forward, I guess, as well. So, basically, like, this is what it basically gets you. It gets a lot of damage infinity, which is, like, can make it so you can basically heal from being hit by stuff. It changes your immunity to be, like, 4% immune to, like, confusion, which is nice. You get an increase in, like, 8 cunning and 7, like, magic for, like, stats, so, okay. So, you basically get a bunch of variety of, like, stuff down here. And, like, basically get, like, critical multiplier, you get, like, Vim when firing critical spells, Vim on crit, max mana, max mim, spell power, spell crit chance, damage resistance when hit. So 50%. When hit with a damage type, gain 50% increased damage of that type for 5 turns. So I basically think that, like, if you basically hit by fire, you basically increase fire damage. So oh, that's when you basically hit an enemy, I think. Okay. So basically, if you hit like an enemy with fire, basically you get increased, like, damage of fire, basically. If you use a turn to a corrupted loss growth poison, basically like an immunity type of thing here. So it's very similar to like the temple one, except like it's basically linked to the staff, and you have to basically use the staff for it to basically work. And apparently this is like more like blight related as opposed to like temporal. So 50% of will is damage converted into drain blight damage, which basically means you heal yourself when you hit stuff. So if all damage types are equal, it heals the wheeler for 20% of the total damage to do. The damage conversion applies to all damage the wheeler does, not just attacks from the staff. So, alright, so it has some very interesting abilities, like, the Telos staff. But another thing about the Telos staff is, like, the one thing that really, like, hurts this, like, staff is basically, like, you have to basically assemble it, which means you have to basically find all 3, like, pieces of it, which is not the easiest thing to basically do. I'm not basically, if you want to basically get access to, like, Secrets of Telos, like, prodigy, you're probably going to have to use, like, your vault, basically, the M vault. And that's actually not something I think most people encourage, so just that basically consider. Real life, I sort of feel like this should be doing more than like just giving you like an item for the most part. It is like very powerful, but it's really something that, like, it could be better, I think. So I probably have to say it's probably not like C tier type of thing. It could be like good, but it just needs to be made better, I think. All right, Tricks of the Trade. This is another one of those like very old prodigies, and you basically get from like Sign of Assassin Lord in a trap quest. Although the Sign of Assassin Lord is actually something that's like actually worth doing now because like you get more benefits from it, but not for his prodigy really. So the idea of his prodigy basically gives you access to like cunning stealth, and gives you access to like Scoundrel if you don't have him already, or if you basically have them, you basically unlock him, you basically get like increased mastery for him. Anyway, then it's also like invisibility damages penalties half, but invisibility damage is basically no longer an issue really, so that's basically sort of a carryover from like a past time. Although the stealth and Scoundrel are basically both interesting, like abilities basically to get, but the thing is that it takes away like points you might want to use for like other stuff. So here's that basically to consider. Basically, you need to invest like points for each to be like good and worth using, and even though they are very very powerful, it's just a really heavy like investment, and like you basically get these like stealth and scoundrel talents basically as like part of being a rogue or like a skirmisher anyways. Really, so number one, well, tricks of trade is basically number one where like it basically give you like a bunch of talent points along with like tricks of like these like talent categories to be very very good, but right now it's just not really giving you enough to really be, make it worth your while. So the final sentence of the description, blah blah blah. Okay, so invisibly from acting Emerald Ruin has 50% damage penalty, reduced by 25% apparently. So basically, Emerald Ruin basically has like damage penalty. Death Embrace has a death penalty or like damage penalty. Your hands from like the Inerfils basically have damage penalties as well apparently. So um you get a few things I guess from like that, but it's not much. This is definitely like a top bit needs to be worked just to just to keep it like simple I guess. So tricks of trade basically like F tier talent I guess. I probably throw around there I guess. So F tier. All right, so that's actually it for like all the projects basically in the game, except for rolling knowledge I guess right here and tricky defense. So those ones right here. Now on the bar there's basically a bunch of like other icons here, and these are basically for like the class evolutions are basically like down here. Um, I never actually used any of like the class evolutions because I never actually played like some paladins, archmages, the licks basically after like um the updates basically that included them just yet. But we'll cover at least tricky defense and world evolutions. Let's get to those right now, I guess. So tricky defenses. This is our anti-magic like prodigy, and it's passive. So your anti-magic basically absorbs like more damage. So I'll note that this sounds like it's a very good idea, basically to like make you more durable with like your anti-magic. But the thing about anti-magic shields is that basically when it absorbs like damage like this, it actually like increases like your equilibrium for like each time basically absorbs like damage like that. So each time damage is absorbed by the shield, it basically like increases your equilibrium by 1 for every 30 points of damage, and the check is basically made. So the thing about like tricky defenses here, this sounds like it's a very good prodigy, but because like your anti-magic shield is already pretty like powerful to begin with, and because it's basically not doing anything to like prevent it from like shattering basically after that, it's like a little bit lacking as it needs like an updated result. You'll find basically a lot of the cutting like prodigies down here. They all need to be updated like a lot for like what they're basically offering, but not much more basically saying that. Tricky defenses, that's easily another like update me sort of like in one, so I'll probably throw these down here and like F tier again. And then you have worldly knowledge. So worldly knowledge is basically sort of like you don't want to do with your prodigies once you just want to like get something. So you basically get access to like any of the escort categories, and you basically get like 5 generic points basically invest in them. I mean, I realize that like sometimes like you can get really beneficial like talents basically from like your escorts and stuff like that, or like for other stuff because you can basically use like 5 generic points wherever you want to. But it's just one of those things where like really knowledge is like um, it's just one of those things like if it basically gave you more, that'd be great. But it's just like not that great. It needs to be reworked just like the other stuff. Be like a little bit better. Like maybe give like 10 points. Like you get like a couple like talents basically fully maxed or something like that, or 4 like talents basically like improve a lot. Definitely one of the more powerful ones at least, but that's all I can really say about it. So there's my ranking basically for the prodigies. I'm not basically like a lot of stuff. Like again, it's based on like normal and like nightmare difficulty, and like I haven't really played insane or like madness for example. So a lot of it's basically might be changed for like those like difficulties, but hopefully that gives you like an insight based on what you think about like these prodigies and like what's good and what's bad. Um, I guess I'll note by the way just in advance though. Obviously, like prodigies, like say like revisionist history and like Draconic Will, they do require you to actually understand basically how the prodigies basically work. So use like this as a start of a fight. Use like this basically like before you get into fights. If you do that properly, then they're like great talents. But of course, any like talent basically in here, if like you use it improperly, it's not going to be very useful. So keep that in mind. Well, that's basically it for now. I'll basically save this list, I guess. 1.7.4. Alright, well, hope you guys basically enjoyed, like, you know, my little tier list here. And there she is. Alright, Nat, that's it for this video, and take care.